Welcome, everyone, to Recovering Wholeness Together with Lynn and Andrea. I'm Andrea. My pronouns are she, her. I'm originally from Boston. My home is Philadelphia, but I'm currently in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, which is the traditional lands of the Mohicans. I am beginning a retreat this evening, so I may be a little bit more quiet than usual because of where I am, but I'm really happy to be with all of you today. Just a little bit about me. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm a certified professional recovery coach, a She Recovers designated coach, Reiki Level 3 master practitioner, an artist, a mom, and a friend. To my good friend Lynn, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can introduce yourself. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for making the time on your retreat to join us. Yes, I am Lynn Galliano, and I am coming from, excuse me, Antioch, California, which is the traditional territory of the Bay Miwok people. I am a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a woman in recovery from many things, including alcohol use disorder, trauma, grief, loss, health issues, all kinds of things, lack mentality, always working on myself, and spiritual recovery, which we're gonna talk about a little bit today. I am a board certified behavior analyst. I'm currently chief clinical officer of the corporation I work for and with, serving individuals with autism. And I'm a She Recovers coach, professional coach. I will actually be hosting tonight. I'm excited about that. And let's see, all the things. I think that's pretty much let's stop there for now. I want to take time to or save time to introduce a really special friend and guest, Shawn Sanford Beck. I'm going to be reading a little bit. And normally we just kind of read a bio and then go right into some questions and conversation, but I know Shawn quite well, and I'm going to have a little bit more to say today. So, Shawn Sanford Beck, Master of Divinity, is a Green Spirit Chaplain in the United Church of Canada and is also a spiritual exploration guide at St. Andrew's College in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Treaty 6 territory. He has been involved with eco spirituality and green theology for the past 2 decades. From urban full moon ceremonies to off-grid earthen prayer to extensive work with Druidic and other creation-centric traditions, Shawn has sown the seeds of eco-spiritual practice wherever he goes. Shawn is also the author of Christian Animism, co-author of A Prairie Rune, and founder of the Fellowship of the Elven Star. And I want to talk about how I came into Shawn's world and he came into mine a little bit as a Reiki practitioner. Over the past year, I decided, or really started about 2 years ago, to try to dig into the actual cultural and traditional roots of Reiki, like where did it start? And when I discovered that it came from like Tendai Buddhism and Shinto practice in Japan, I started studying Shinto. And Shinto is an animistic indigenous practice of the people of Japan. And I wanted to learn about animism, and I started Googling animism. And this book came up in my search called Christian Animism, and I was like, "That's interesting," because to me that those two don't go together. Like, what? How did that happen? And so I grabbed the book on my Kindle and read it like in a couple of days because I was really, really excited about it and I loved it. And then I found that Shawn had a second book called A Prairie Rune. And so then I read that and I reached out and connected with him. And we've had a lot of conversations since. I actually spend about an hour a week with Shawn in Fellowship of the Elven Star group. And I'm part of the Green Priestcraft group on Facebook. And I wanted to share, and he'll talk more about what those things are, but I wanted to share from his book, A Prairie Rune, which he is a co-author for this book. And just from the introduction, it will kind of give an idea of why, how Shawn fits into our recovering wholeness together. So I'm going to just start with this, and then we'll let Shawn actually have a turn to speak here. Um, a prairie rune had its genesis in a question that went something like this. If settler culture has been so toxic so often towards so many, how did it lose its own roots? How did specifically Anglo settler culture become corrupted along the way? And more importantly, how can it reconnect with ancestral roots deeper than Victorian era whiteness? One thing that I've heard over and over again from Indigenous elders is that white people need to figure out who they are and where they come from. We are cut off from our roots and therefore listless and dangerous as a culture of domination. Indigenous people, as well as a wide variety of visible minorities, have paid the price of Euro-Canadian cultural amnesia and white supremacy. Over the past 3 decades, I've taken this challenge from the elders to heart. And then I'm going to skip through a bunch of pages here, and I'm going to go all the way to the end. Give me 1 second. I'm going to talk about, I don't know if you can see this, probably not because there's a filter on Sophia wisdom. And the prairie rune is the rune of Sophia. So Shawn writes, God is love, and her body is all creation. She is a tree of life who gathers her children in love. This final rune, Sophia, is not actually part of the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. Sophia was gifted to me by the Spirit during a time in my life when I was wrestling deeply with the meaning of Christianity and the tenacious nature of injustice within the church. Since then, this rune has become a personal credo, a cry of faith, which has also found resonance among many others with whom I have shared it. I see Sophia as a beautiful and blessed tree upon which each of the other runes hangs and shimmers as a leaf. She is not simply one among many, but rather the source and goal of the entire Futhark. In our many and varied reflections of the runes in these short pages, I hope and pray that the common theme of love has leapt forth in both poetry and prose. Love divine is the point of it all, really. Creation, culture, language, land, our ancestors, our descendants, are more than human relations. It all means nothing unless it is rooted in and grounded in love. So that's where I want to stop and now say, welcome, Shawn.
Thank you. Thanks, Lynn and Andrea. Thank you for having me today. It's really good to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. So, yeah, Shawn, so I think probably the best place to start is what's Lynn talking about this rune of Sophia? What is this?
Yeah. So, well, like you mentioned, reading that bit from the book, the Rune of Sophia for me has become sort of the almost like a creed, but not quite. It's a lodestone. It's sort of almost like a spiritual compass that I use to sort of keep me on track, to help me understand sort of what is the strange nature of divinity and mystery in the world. Because right now, in particular, in the tradition that I come from, which is Christianity, Christianity has been hijacked in such a brutal way, not only in the US, also in Canada, certain parts of Europe. It's become this sort of, well, I just call it Christofascism, quite frankly. It's become this uh, sort of a monster of white nationalism, white supremacy, fundamentalism. And so, in the midst of all that, when I'm trying to sort of keep myself true to my own roots, I know what I'm not. But I needed something to sort of remind me and help me rehearse over and over again what it is that me and my deepest tradition really stands for. And the essence of it, of course, is love. That's why it starts with that God is love, which is a biblical statement. A lot of people might recognize that as from Scripture, and then it goes on to describe, though, what that actually might look like. That love divine love is embodied in the whole creation, and that she really, this divine love isn't just passive too. This divine love gathers all. There's an inclusivity, an expansiveness, and an inclusivity where the divine love won't rest until all beings come to their fullness, and that's beings human and more than human as well. That's another big part. There's the animistic piece that's embedded in there as well. So it's a hope and a desire for the healing of the entire universe. Yeah.
Right. And why the word rune? I
Okay.
want to get that in there first so that people understand
Yeah.
what we're talking about. Because when I first
Mhm.
got the book and I saw that there are runes on the cover, I'm
Mhm.
thinking Nordic, a whole different
Mhm.
thing.
So, and in that book, In a Prairie Rune, the bulk of the book is actually
Yes.
exegeting the Anglo-Saxon Futhorc, an adapted version of it. There are some runes that are actually left out for specific reasons, but it's basically looking at each of the runes of the Futhorc through my experience of being a settler on the Canadian prairies, but also it was written during a time when I was living off the grid. We went off grid for about 8 years, and so we were living pretty close to the land with no electricity, no running water. Getting the water from the lake, cooking on wood fire, heating the with wood fire. So it felt like a time and a place when I went sort of back in time to deeper roots in my heritage. So the bulk of the book is looking at those traditional runes, what we usually think of as runes, what Tolkien would have put in Lord of the Rings, right? That's where most people encounter the runes the first time. But the word rune itself doesn't only mean those specific Germanic or Nordic or Anglo-Saxon symbols. The word itself is from an old Indo-European root that can mean either a whisper, a mystery, a secret, and it has the like there are various literary forms of runes, but it has the sense also of a very small verse that will encapsulate the secret or the mystery that one is trying to articulate and trying to explore. So I took that format of a rune, a mystery in the bigger sense, and out of that was born the rune of Sophia, which is, as you read from the book, it is not actually one of the Anglo-Saxon Futhark. It's particularly a rune, a mystery, a secret, or a secret decoder, and maybe we can get into that for myself, and I've been trying to share that with others as well. So the decoder piece, the secret decoder piece, you might remember when you were a kid getting these sheets of paper that just had scribbles in multiple different colors all over it. Or you might have seen something that had a whole bunch of different letters all jumbled together, but you couldn't make heads or tails of it, usually in different colors, until you took the secret decoder ring, right? And it would be something that you would look through, or maybe a pair of glasses that you put on, sort of lenses, and all of a sudden it would filter out certain colors, and either the picture or the message, whatever had been encoded, would pop out at you, and you would see, and it would make sense. It would be clear, and you'd get the message. For me, when I look at our world, and particularly when I look at my own religious tradition, which is Christianity, I see a whole jumble of craziness, quite frankly, a whole jumble of a mix of really good stuff and really cruel, oppressive, patriarchal, hierarchical stuff that we need to recover from, right? A whole bunch of stuff. And so what I do with the rune of Sophia is I treat it as that decoder ring. I look through it at this sort of mess of inheritance, and all of a sudden, the good stuff, the healing stuff, the redemptive stuff, the inclusive stuff, the transformative stuff jumps out at me. It becomes clear, and I can just let the rest go. And so I find that a helpful tool when I'm, in leadership within the church and trying to help others, and not just in the church. I mean, my conversations extend well beyond the bounds of the church. But when people are engaging with all the mess, sometimes the rune of Sophia becomes a good tool to help them get clarity on what might be life-giving. There's a long rambly answer to why a rune, but it's a mystery. It's a secret and a secret decoder.
I love that definition. And for folks like me who may not be familiar with all of this, I would love for you to give us a definition of both animism,
Mhm.
and also the word that I probably will botch with my Boston accent, but Futhark?
Okay. All right. Let's start
Thank
with
you.
Futh. It's actually the one I'm working with is Futhork, but there's also a Futhark. And it's very easy to explain. If you take the first, is it six? Yeah, the first six runes, which transliterate to F, U, and then the TH rune for thorn, and then O, and then it's rad or R, and a Ken for K. K for Ken. It just spells it out. So it's like when we say alphabet, and that's because the first two letters of well, it actually goes back Greek and Hebrew, but are alpha and beta. We just say alphabet, and it stands for the whole thing. Futhark or
Excellent.
Futhork stands for the whole runic sequence. And why in the Germanic rune, or what's called the Elder Futhark, it's because the there's an A rune rather than an O rune, so it just changes how it sounds. So that was the easy question. But that I hope
Thank
that
you.
explains what Futhork
So
means.
helpful. Yes.
Okay, yeah,
I love it.
just means alphabet in rune speak. Animism is a harder question to answer, although not entirely so. So a lot of people will explore animism. They'll hear in that word anima or animate. So they'll get a sense, okay, this has something to do with things being alive. And it indeed it does. But from a certain background, they might stumble across an old polemic way of looking at animism, which is a very negative religious way of saying, especially when the missionaries who went around the world during colonialism and would see different indigenous groups and other religious traditions in working in relationship with the natural world, the missionaries would go, oh, well, they're worshiping rocks, trees, stones, and beasts. That's animism. That's bad. Okay, so there's all of that colonial missionary baggage going on. Animism, for some people who are maybe have a much more positive view of nature and earth-based traditions, might go, well, animism, that sounds like the divine spirit is in everything, which technically might be called either pantheism or panentheism, one of those two terms. And this sense that, yeah, the divine just permeates the whole cosmos. And I would say it's similar. Animism definitely is close to that, but animism is a bit more specific. It actually sees each being of creation, whether that's a tree, a rock, a human, an animal, a plant, weather patterns, mountain ranges, rivers. It sees each being as having its own form of consciousness, sentience, agency. So the way some people put it these days, and this comes from Graham Harvey, who is probably the foremost scholar of what's called the new animism, academic study of animism, says that an animist is somebody who experiences the universe as teeming with persons, only some of whom are human. Right? That sometimes throws people like, what? But it's this sense that there are many other persons that humans are only one type of person. And so this is where we begin to hear our indigenous friends and their talk of the tree persons, the plant persons, the rock persons, the four-legged persons, the finned persons, and the winged persons. This sense of the whole universe and all of its beings actually being persons. So it's not, which is, you can see, a little bit different than just the idea of the divine spirit flows through everything. That's nice. That's good. I amen to that. I agree. But this animism takes it a little bit further and says not only does the divine spirit animate all beings, but all beings have their own integrity as persons.
Mm.
So there's animism in a nutshell for you. Does that help a little bit with that
Excellent.
definition? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people see the title of my book, and it's the first there. So there are a small number of theologians who are working with the idea of Christian animism. But my book was the first one to actually put those two words together in a title because I just thought we need to start working on this. And many people would see it and go, well, aren't those oxymorons? Because animism and Christianity have in some ways been so divorced from each other for so long, and there's been such hostility, mainly from Christianity towards an animistic perspective, but also a little bit, especially with the neo-animism, which is part of neo-pagan revival movements. There's some anger and hostility that it gets expressed for good reasons back to Christianity. So there's this sort of tension between these ideas. And for me, so if one of the questions is why Christian animism, for me it's because Christianity is essentially a theology, a religious practice and theology. Animism is essentially a cosmology, a way of understanding how the whole universe works. These days, most Christianities in the West default to the cosmology of a dead, materialistic, all the universe is just sort of matter put there for us to exploit. And then you layer capitalism and consumerism on top of that, and you get a recipe for disaster. So I'm saying we don't need that worldview. That worldview needs to be left behind. We're in recovery from capitalist consumerist materialism. We need a cosmology that sees the universe as alive and having its own integrity and filled with persons to whom we can relate, not resources for us to exploit.
Mm. Well said.
So
I can
following
get
on
on that soapbox real quick.
following on that, so one of the titles that you have for yourself and that I'm on the same path with is Green Priest. So
Mhm.
now I think that's a good way to segue into like what's a Priest, and then
Yeah,
maybe what is Fellowship of the Elven Star.
of the Elven Star. Yeah, thanks, Lynn. Yeah, that's a good segue. So one of the things that has emerged for me when I've been sort of reflecting on all of these things, especially animism and its relationship to Christianity over the past couple of decades, is this question. It's actually the question comes from the title of a Wendell Berry essay. The question is, what are people for? And I know Wendell Berry wrote an awesome essay. I can't remember what it said, but I remember what the question was. It just sort of haunted me. Like, what are people for? And as an animist, it's specifically like, what are human people for? Like, it's pretty easy to look around at the whole creation and see how all of the other more than human people fit together because they've co-evolved in all of these beautiful ways. But human people seem to have taken a different track somewhere. We've sort of messed up the game in some ways. And so this question, what are people for? So started to go through all the answers or a number of answers that different religious perspectives have thrown out. Some, like Christianity, and Christianity in its toxic form, builds on this notion of humans are here to be the masters and dominators of creation. We're like to be the top of the pyramid, and the whole rest of the world is just put here for us to use and do what we want with. And you actually don't have to look much too deeply into our, both Canadian and American and European notions of natural resource policy to discover that that is the operative model. Everything is here for humans to use and exploit. So I knew that that was not the role, that's not what humans are for. Then I started reading a lot of deep green ecology. So philosophy that's coming out of, deep green philosophy. That's a lot of it comes out of Northern Europe. Like Arne Ness is one of the key people of that. And there's this sense that, okay, no, not only are humans not the top of the pyramid, not the center of the whole of everything, but humans actually have no particular role. Like there's no uniqueness about humans at all. And in fact, the whole ecosystems of the planet might be better off if we were just sort of treated like a cancer and disappeared eventually, because that's how we treat the earth. Humans are like a cancer on the earth. We'd be better off without us. Well, I thought, okay, I can see the point. Like I've got some sympathy with that perspective, but really, if you have a worldview that only functions with the idea of your own species being wiped off the face of the earth, it's like there's not going to be a lot of buy-in from people to begin with, and it's not really a healthy view. So I thought, hey, there's got to be something else. And I stumbled from several different sources, but I stumbled into this notion that comes out of Eastern Orthodoxy, certain strands of Eastern Orthodox Christianity that says humans were put here not to be masters, not even to be stewards necessarily, but humans were set in the midst of the garden to be priests. I thought, ooh, that's interesting. Of course, the word priest comes loaded with baggage. So like, let's take priest and just supplement it with other terms. So whether that's minister, shaman, druid, wizard, witch,
Yeah.
pastor, like any of those sort of other religious terms. But the spiritual person that sort of calls the community into worship and praise, and sort of functions as not a dispenser or a mediator of blessings, but somebody whose whole job it is to point out the blessing and to accelerate the blessing that is there within creation. Chaplain is a much better term that we've stumbled upon that seems to work even better than priest. But what if that is actually the role of the human in relation to the rest of the world? What if we are all, as human beings, called to be chaplains of the entire more than human creation? What if we're called at our deepest level not to use and exploit? We know when a priest uses and exploits, that's the deepest betrayal, right? That's the deepest betrayal. What if what we're meant to do is relate to, listen, care, pray for, bless, be blessed by, to walk as a priest, essentially, to walk as a priest in the midst of all the more than human beings. So that's where the notion of green priestcraft comes from. It's the sense that maybe there are some skills and some perspectives and practices that we could learn to be better human beings in relationship to the rest of the world. Indigenous cultures have these tools quite intact and quite close to their own, like the heart of their own traditions, ceremony, protocols, songs, dances that keep the human people in relation with the rest of the more than human world. We've sort of lost those. We've squandered them along the way. We've exchanged them for something that is much more mechanistic. What if we could relearn those ways of being? See, once you ask a question, it's hard to shut me up. So that may have taken us down many different tangents, but does it sort of get at what I mean by green priestcraft?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Um, Yeah, I know you well. Like I said, I spend an hour with you a week, and I just always, it's so funny because I was explaining to Andrea how you're just such an approachable, regular guy. And I mean that in the best
Thank you.
way. And yet the things that come out of your mouth are what I look and have looked for 20 years, 25 years in gurus all over the world that sit up on high thrones with the saffron robes and the incense burning. And I've got, 250 books on the bookshelf. And then there's Shawn, who's just like hanging out in Saskatoon and doing his thing and taking walks in the morning. And you're just so on it. That's that's recovery. That's
Mm.
recovery.
Mm, mm.
Thanks, Lynn. Mm.
Thank you.
Cool.
I'd like to share what I'm in recovery from because I
Mm.
remembered just now that I did not do that at the beginning. Um, so I'm in recovery from a lot of different things, and it really depends on the day. But today and always, I'm in recovery from alcohol. And there's a lovely sign on the door where I'm staying that says this is a smoke-free and alcohol-free campus. And I thought, I found my people. Now I just have to
Mm.
learn to love yoga. Um,
Excellent.
so I'm very grateful for that. I'm in recovery from anxiety, loss, grief, lots of other things too. But today, mainly, I'm thinking about my nest being empty,
Mm.
and my kids being at college for the first time. But there is, to me, a spiritual aspect of recovery. The program that I was affiliated with in the beginning, 20 years ago or more, a lot more actually. Back then, that was the only option, that 12-step program, and I learned so much from it. But I think that people now are very interested in different ways of recovering. So you may be recovering from a medical condition or a mental health issue, like a substance use disorder, but you have so many more options now, I think, to find ways to connect, maybe too many
Mm.
options, really. It can be overwhelming, with other people who are also wanting to be the best version of themselves. And Lynn is a seeker, and I love that about her. So I'm so excited when she introduces me to wonderful new folks like you, Shawn. Tell me a little bit about I was watching you, Lynn, as Shawn was speaking, sharing, not to put you on the spot, but sharing about what it means to be a priest in that sense, which was beautiful. I'm curious what's coming up for you and how does this fit in with your recovery in terms of spirituality, Lynn, if I can ask you that.
Well, yeah, sure. You can ask. It doesn't mean I'll be articulate about it because I didn't have a rehearsed response. What I feel like is, and so this kind of is going to go back to what I was initially reading about Shawn talking about whiteness and colonialism and settler. I have genealogy that my family members have done that trace some of my roots back to the 1600s in this country. So, I do my ancestry DNA and it may say that I'm 75% English and, the rest is Scotch and Irish. Great, that's fine. And I've been there and I love it. Um, but my family has lived in California for over 100 years and in the country for, over 300 years. Um, and so and I'm an adopted person. My parents adopted me. So I have felt incredibly disconnected from roots. And so as a seeker, as you've pointed out, I've been trying to find where I belong and who I belong with and who my tribe is. The dominant culture here is Judeo-Christian spirituality. I mean, that's what, America is built on, for better or worse. And I have tried pretty much dipped my toe into everything from, pagan spirituality to Buddhism and yoga and Christian, studying Kabbalah, did all whatever. And trying to, and a lot of like Celtic and Druidic, which obviously would be from my own ancestry. But then I tried to like make that fit, and I don't live in England, and I'm not, Celtic, right? I'm Californian. So a lot of what Shawn talks about is, again, he's talking about using that rune of Sophia as a lens. So I have my favorite citrine. You can't really see it well. Using this as a lens to filter through, you can use that rune of Sophia to anything. It doesn't matter whether you're, Hindu or Mormon or, whatever. It's a rune, and it's a whisper, and it's a mystery. And so what Shawn and the group, which I'm going to give him the chance to talk about in a second, Fellowship of the Elven Star, has provided for me in recovery is a place that I can be myself. And and no matter what I throw at Shawn, he's always got the same calm, very thoughtful, contemplative response, and can be a journey friend for me through all of my questions of finding my wholeness.
For sharing that, Lynn. I so appreciate
Sure. I'll get you back for this later. Um, but so we need to talk about Fellowship of the Elven
Yeah,
Star,
Yeah.
because that
yeah,
is, where my practice is. And I want to say, and Shawn knows I'm going to say this, the name sort of sounds very Tolkien-esque, and it sounds, like Elvish. It's not Lord of the Rings, although certainly all of us in the group love Lord of the Rings, but that's not what it's about. So I will let Shawn talk about Fellowship of Elven Star and like the different rays of that
yeah,
star. But an Elven star is a seven-pointed star, so that's what that means. But yeah,
yeah. Well, thank you, Lynn. And I'm glad that it is that for you, and I'm glad to be in this relationship. It's very good. So, Fellowship of the Elven Star. In some ways, the first word is important, fellowship, which is a very traditional word, but it's essentially about community and connection. And when I think, and Andrea, especially when you were talking about recovery and the importance of what we are connected to. I was only joking somewhat when I said we're all in recovery from Western civilization, capitalism, colonialism. Like, we're in recovery together from a worldview and a set of practices and understandings of how things are that are based on disconnection, that are based on separation. We've inherited this for hundreds of years now, this sense that we are essentially separate from each other. So the importance of strong connection and community is paramount. Connection with each other, connection with authentic lineage and heritage, our family roots, connection with that, our cultural roots, connection with the land, the places where we are. We're learning that from our indigenous kins. Connection with the more than human world around us, and connection with source, whatever name we give that to. So the sense of needing connection, needing community, that's what's there in that word fellowship. Like I say, it's an old traditional word, but fellowship is so important. The Fellowship of the Elven Star is this, it's a relatively small group for now, but it is this group of people in community, learning about the rune of Sophia and learning sort of what it means, finding a way to start to use it as a lens to see the rest of the world. Learning about green priestcraft. How do we actually come into relationship with the more than human people around us and with the living earth around us? How do we learn to bless? How do we learn to commune and communicate? Those are things that we weren't taught in school or Sunday school either, for that matter. We were not taught in most places. So we try to practice with each other and teach each other. And then, of course, this notion of the elven star. So the elven star is, as Lynn said, it's a seven-pointed star. And each of the rays, the seven rays of the elven star, represent a different aspect of life that we want to concentrate on. So I can just name those seven rays just to give you a sense. So there's the ray of devotion. Like, what is it in our life that we are really devoted to? That might take, it might be answered that in religious language, or it might just be in deep values. Like, what are the deep values and our loyalties? What are we devoted to? There's a ray of service. What are we giving ourselves to in the world? How are we making ourselves of use? How are we contributing to the common good, the well-being of the world? Service. There's a ray of enchantment. So that's what sort of makes it magical too. We we live in an enchanted world, but many people don't see it. We live in a magical world where the trees talk, where the river will sing to us if we know how to listen, where our words have power to actually enact what we say in the world, where our psychic senses, our psychic abilities can be seen and valued and trained. So there's the ray of enchantment. There's the ray of study, because some of this stuff takes a lot of, we want to dive in and study, go deep into studying religious traditions, studying psychological traditions, whatever range of study will help us be better human people in this world. There's the ray of ceremony. How do we learn how to create meaningful rituals for ourselves, for our families, for the people in our lives that we serve and connect with? How do we, there's a craft to that. How do you build a sort of nest of experience that people can come into and have a good spiritual experience and then go out safely? There's an art to that. So ceremony. Chivalry. This is when Lynn pushed back against the word chivalry, because chivalry is another one of those loaded terms. But it's the warrior energy that we all have. Whether that's the mama bear energy, whether that's the quest for social justice in the world, whatever we want to call that, that's the Jedi Knight that's going to strive for justice and peace in the galaxy, right? And then the seventh is the healing ray, because all of these things, all that we do, have to be aimed at healing ourselves, healing our friends, our communities, our families, and ultimately helping to heal the planet. So out of those seven rays, each person is encouraged to sort of build their own way of life, so that we're not sort of trying to replicate each other's way of life, because everybody lives differently. Everybody's a different person. Everybody's in a different context. But as we share together the seven rays, it's like a guiding star in the sky that we're all following together. Even if in our lives, our rule of life or our way of life looks differently, we each tap into those seven rays of what I call the Elven Star. So it's a small growing group. It is, I refer to it as a mystery school. Some people that term resonates. Other people, it's like mystery school. Okay, whatever. But it's a community that works on these spiritual things together. And yeah, be happy to share more about that for anybody who is interested.
And
I just like to make a comment really quick, Lynn, because you know obviously a lot more about this than I do, and hearing from you just now, I need to go back and look and think more about those seven rays, but it seems so thoughtful and um well thought out. When we talk about recovery, I think that the one thing that I really love about She Recovers, which is the organization that Lynn and I volunteer with, that supports women and non-binary folks in recovery from anything, not just substances. It can be from
Yeah.
anything. One of their intentions and guiding principles is that we respect other people's own individual pathways and patchworks of recovery, of healing. And it sounds like that's one of the tenets of your program, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
is that everybody gets to choose the way that they heal themselves.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I wanted to point out too that fellowship is not, although Shawn is a Christian minister, you don't have to be a Christian. It's open to anyone of any faith or none.
Yeah. Yeah,
Obviously,
exactly.
it would be something that those points on the star, those tenets would resonate with you, but they don't have to be attached to any ideology or dogma or
Yeah.
spiritual path. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in this age that we live in this world, we need to not just tolerate diversity, but celebrate it, right? And to really look for the commonalities and the creative differences that mark the plurality of all of who we are. So the more the merrier.
That's awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. So, if you want, I think we should kind of start looking at wrapping it up. We've been talking for a minute here. What if, people are listening and they want to find you and they want to know about offerings coming up? I know you teach about tithing too, which we probably can't get into that whole concept, but tithing is something that is very similar to Reiki. And so that's something that I've taken a workshop with you. Like what do you have coming up and how can they find you?
Yeah, so the easiest place to find me, and I apologize because it does tend to be Facebook, and we've struggled with face. Everybody has their own issues with Facebook, I know, but the easiest place to sort of do the initial find is on Green Spirit Chaplaincy, the Facebook page for Green Spirit Chaplaincy. Ironically, with a little space between green and spirit. There's a whole story behind that. Green Spirit Chaplaincy will get you sort of what's going on at any given point in time. Green Spirit Chaplaincy is the ministry of the United Church that I'm formally chaplain of. There's also a Linktree link that I think might get put in the show notes that also links to what I'm doing. Some of the next things we'll be going back into what's called the pattern of Green Spirit Groves, which meet weekly, and it's a discussion group, sort of spiritual teachings on ecology and spirituality. There's full moon ceremony coming up early in the new year. That's an in-person. So most of the stuff that I do is online and available sort of across time zones. But there is some in-person stuff that I do as well. The next big online thing is actually going to be tomorrow. Well, so I'm not sure whether that'll be with your release of this video, but on Saturday. And that's part of the Christian Animism Network, where we'll be doing a Yule gathering for the Christian Animism Network. So lots of ways to get involved.
Great. Thank you so much, Shawn.
Thank
Andrea,
you.
any last thoughts? I was thinking that maybe Shawn could lead us out with Shawn, that page that you read at the beginning, maybe
Mm,
when we have meetings, you could maybe go through that. But first, I want
sure.
to make sure that Andrea has had ample chance to share thoughts or questions.
Yes, you've really piqued my interest. I hope that I can learn more about some of the other offerings that you have, specifically the one that is similar to Reiki.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of folks will be interested in to hear more about your interpretation of the solstice, what that looks
Mhm.
like. So, yes, looking forward to learning more about you and all the good work that you're doing to help people heal their spiritual selves and the planet. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, it's wonderful to converse with both of you. Thank you so much for having me today. And yeah, if you'd like, I can sort of send us on our way with a bit of it's a grounding meditation. It's called the Tree of Life. I actually originally was inspired by Starhawk's Tree of Life and through the reclaiming tradition, but have sort of adapted it for green spirit use over the years. But why don't we just take a moment just to be still and to breathe? And if you'd like to close your eyes, that's fine. Or you can keep them open if you want, just soft focus. Or just take a few breaths. And as we breathe together, we give thanks for the breath of life that moves throughout the whole universe, the breath that animates every living being, every person, human and more than human. Breathing together, we imagine ourselves as a grove of trees, separate through space and through time, and yet linked together by this sacred breath. Trees gathered in a circle, a grove. Each one of us, a tree with a strong and supple trunk, with branches reaching up to the heavens, reaching up from our heads and our shoulders and our arms, reaching to the skies, drawing down light, the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets in their courses, drawing it down. And each of us with roots going down from our hearts through our hips and our legs and down through our feet, stretching down through the floors, down into the earth. These sacred and holy earth beneath us. Each breath lets those roots go deeper, down through the topsoil, down through the clay, through the substrata, into the rocks and the crystals and the rivulets, down into the flesh and the bones of Mother Earth. Deeply rooted in these places, we give thanks for the first peoples of wherever we are, and for the treaties, the sacred covenants that allow us to be here, that invite us into right relations of truth-telling, of justice-seeking, of healing and reconciliation. And we feel those roots going down through all the layers of history, all the stories, all the memories, all the ancestries of these places where we are. And we breathe our thanks, our gratitude for all our relations who surround us, relations human and more than human, for the tree people, the plant people, for the four-leggeds, the winged ones, the finned ones, for the winds and the waters, all our relations. Giving thanks for this time together. Giving thanks that God is love and her body is all creation. She is a tree of life who gathers her children in love. May it be so for us. May it be so forever. Blessed be. Another breath and open the eyes, and here we are.
Thank you, Shawn.
Thank you.
That was really beautiful.
Mhm.
It was so great to have you, and I'm just really thankful for your friendship, your time, your guidance, and all the work that you do. So I am excited for other people to know about you, and I hope that this will reach a lot of people and be healing for them too.
Thank you. Thank you both, and for the work that you do.
Thank you. I'm
Thank
gonna,
you. This is a beautiful way to start my weekend. I appreciate you
Good.
both so much.
all right, I'm gonna stop recording.